didn't you endorse Maisie one year against Lingle? You endorsed Maisie one year, didn't you?
Movie, yeah.
Mufi? Okay, not Maisie.
Yeah, I endorsed Corona one time. Too.
That's right. I remember now. Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Hello, everybody. Chad Blair again with Honolulu Civil Beat. And remember, we're a nonprofit news organization dedicated, I'm just going to read it right from the script here, to cultivating an informed body of citizens, all striving to make Hawaii a better place to live. We're hosting monthly events. Know Your Candidates is part of a special 5-part series on the gubernatorial race. And it's leading up to the primaries, and it's hosted in partnership with the Department of Communications right here at Hawaii Pacific University. This event is being live streamed and archived on YouTube and Facebook. Our format tonight, 40 minutes of one-on-one, followed by audience questions, which we have been collecting online and in person. Remember, folks in the audience, please keep it quiet. Make sure your cell phones are on vibrate or even off, and that will be helpful. And now, to the star of our program, none other than John Carroll, Republican candidate for governor. Hi, John. How you doing?
I was going to say the star is Chad Blair.
No, and I'm the second banana here. You're the star. By the way, kudos for wearing what has to be a Frank Fosse era vintage Aloha shirt. You knew Frank Fosse, right?
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, Frank was a Democrat, and I was a Republican when I first ran for U.S. House. And I was totally unknown. And he, for some reason, took me under his wing. And even as a Democrat, he was helping me get elected as a Republican. And he later became mayor and so on and so forth. But we always had a very strong friendship. In fact, later on, I'll tell you a joke that was his favorite joke.
We probably have to do that off air, as my guess. Remember,
no.
we're live, John. This is going to be recorded for posterity. So
right.
If you can't see the shirt, I can just tell you it says the Handy Van. It has the bus, Diamond Head. It's really, really a classic shirt, and sort of a, you don't have politicians like Frank Fosse much anymore. It's
exactly.
Not
yeah.
Here.
Actually, I did a thing for Civil Beat, in fact, and asked that it be for Star Advertiser, and asked that it be dedicated to the memory of Fosse, because he's the kind of a leader that I want to be, and he's the kind of a leader that we need here. Somebody who's doing things, who's on top of what's wrong, and is out there doing something about it. He was with his dog at 5 in the morning, running to the garbage dump and the sewer system and everything else. He knew what was going on. He knew what needed to be done, and he got it done. And that's how I intend to operate as your governor.
Okay, we're going to dedicate this interview to Frank Fosse, the memory of the great Honolulu mayor. All right, my first real question is, well, first of all, let me tell folks a little bit about you. You have quite a career, Korean War veteran, Air Force fighter pilot, and operational planner. What kind of jets did you fly?
I flew the T-33, the old F-80, and then I flew the F-86E, which is a big fighter, and the F-86L, which is an all-weather interceptor. And I flew the F-102, which is also an interceptor, better than the F-86D and L. And then I also flew the Phantom, but I only had one flight. I was never combat ready in that airplane.
We'll have you hold that mic just a little bit closer.
Okay.
We don't want anybody to miss out on any words. You're also an attorney. You were a military judge advocate. And then a commercial pilot for Hawaiian Airlines. How long did you fly for Hawaiian?
32 years, yeah.
32 years for Hawaiian Airlines.
Yes.
What drew you to flying? Why on earth did you pick that as a career?
I didn't really pick it as a career. I just picked it as fun. And what happened was I soloed actually when I was 15 years old. And I just always loved to fly. And even now I still fly out at Dillingham, fly gliders. And it's just something beautiful about flying that I just love. In fact, I almost got into a fight at Hawaiian Airlines when we went to the DC-8s. There was a big argument in the dispatch about how much we would be charging to fly the DC-8, because we'd been flying DC-9s up to that point. And I said, well, hell, I'll fly it for free. And they, no, you won't. They were all upset that I was willing to fly for free. So, but no, flying is just a beautiful thing, and it's been a great blessing in my life. So.
Okay, terrific. Well, why are you running for governor? That's the big question on everyone's mind.
Well, number one, the reason I'm running is I don't see anybody else who can do this job properly. I think Phil LaRue is a very nice guy. I think Angela is a very lovely lady. I like Governor Ige. I think he's a great guy. Hanabusa I have some personal problems with, but all in all, I just don't see anybody here other than Sam Sloan. And, well, there's a couple that like Sam Sloan that could do the job but will not do it. Kali'i Akina is another one. And I feel that if they would go, I would not have gone. But they won't do it. So I just took it on myself to do it. I indict the Democrat Party for 64 years of massive failure. This state right now, you can talk about what's wrong about the homeless and the jobless and et cetera, but fundamentally we have unfunded liabilities in the billions of dollars. And we're talking about what we're going to do. We don't have anything to do it with. We've got to get a major change in our environment, and it's got to be in agriculture, and it's got to come from eliminating the shipping restrictions which violate the constitutional provision of the Commerce Clause. And if we get that taken care of, and I'm trying to do that with President Trump right now, we will have a totally different state here in about 2 years if we get shipping restrictions lifted and we have free open trade.
You're bringing up the Jones Act right away. I know that's a personally close issue to you. For those who don't know about it, Stuart Yurton, our reporter who's actually here tonight, noted in his story on what the governor candidates would do for the economy that you would like to overturn the Jones Act. It is a federal act. It requires goods that are transported between U.S. ports to be carried by ships built only in the U.S. and staffed only by U.S. crews. Why is that a bad idea?
Well, number one, it's the history of it, if I can go into this, it's got nothing to do with national defense. It's got nothing to do with shipbuilding. And I found this out from research that was done at Grassroots. What it is in 1919, Canadian shippers were taking goods from Seattle, Washington to Anchorage, Alaska. They were charging way less than the Seattle shippers were charging. Seattle shippers go to Jones, who was in the Senate or the House at that time. He introduced a bill saying that the ship has to be built, manned, owned, maintained, flagged in America, or it can't travel in interstate commerce. What that means is that if a ship doesn't meet those requirements, it can't come from Japan to Hawaii and then go to California and drop off the other half of their load. Chinese ships, the same thing. So the net effect of that has been that everything that we get here, which is practically 95% of everything we consume, goes to a state in the United States and then put on a Matson ship and brought here. So Matson now has a monopoly on shipping, and we are paying through the nose or elsewhere to get this taken care of. And that is actually something I've been working on since 1970. I put in my first anti-Jones Act bill in 1970 when I was in the State House of Representatives. The key thing here is that the Commerce Clause, according to a 1801 case, the judge there said that the primary purpose of the Commerce Clause is to ensure that every state has equal access to interstate commerce with the states, nations, and Indian tribes. When this happened, where Jones got this thing put in place, the Canadian shippers got put out of business and the Seattle shippers took over. The Alaska governor goes into federal court and he claims to the federal court that this violates the Commerce Clause, and the language that the judge used in that court case was, he said that if you were a state, the Commerce Clause would apply, but you're a territory, so it does not. Now, I unfortunately didn't find out about that case until about 3 months ago, or I would have had it leading my 2 lawsuits that I brought against the federal government.
Right, you have been active litigating on this. Let's talk about that argument about the cost of living, that all our goods, most of it anyway, is coming over, fuel, food, and so forth, furniture, cars, you name it. If it's so bad for Hawaii, if it's been driving up our prices for so long, you've been working on this for decades,
yes.
Why hasn't this been repealed already?
Well, thank you for the question.
Sure.
First of all, I hate to call it hush money, but people, which includes all the Democrat leaders, Dan Inouye and so forth, all the way down to Linda Lingle to Waihee and so forth.
She's a Republican, Linda.
I know, and but we had a anti-Jones Act plank in the Republican Party platform before she became party chairman. When she became party chairman after a few years, she got that plank taken out. She took money from Alexander Baldwin and Matson, as did everybody else who was in leadership positions, and I just call it hush money because it's keeping them from bringing up the fact that this state is getting absolutely raped, is the best word I can think of, because of the impact of the Jones Act on our economy.
Okay, last question on the Jones Act. I know you want to talk more about it, and it is important. We did a whole series on Civil Beat on the Jones Act, and
I know you did a terrific job.
Well, thank you. Our reporter Eric Pape really researched it, and on balance, you had pro and con arguments. Couldn't quite figure out exactly was it as bad as everyone says it is? Is it as good as everyone says it is? Not really a conclusive answer, but let's ask this question. If you do become governor, a Republican, the president, Donald Trump, is a Republican. Right now, at least, until the November elections, the House and Senate are controlled by Republicans. Let's say that stands come November. What are you going to tell Donald Trump in Congress to do about the Jones Act?
Well, number one is I've already done it. I've written 2 letters and sent briefs to him, and we're saying that this is totally violative of the Commerce Clause. He gave a 20-day exemption to Puerto Rico, which is totally inadequate, and Puerto Rico is now bankrupt, and they're blaming it on the Jones Act, and we're not far behind them. I'm sorry to keep going back to that.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
You're talking about the storm that hit, that devastated Puerto Rico, and the president did lift that Jones Act requirement, correct?
For 20 days only, and then he shut it down again. And so what I'm asking him to do now, and actually the reason I'm running for governor as opposed to U.S. senator is because Sam Sloan told me, John, if you go for Senate, you got to convince 50 other guys to go with you on the Jones Act, whereas if you're governor of this state and you go directly to the president as the governor, you can get him to do an executive order, and that's what I'm trying to do. But I'm going to do both, and if he doesn't do it, by the time I'm elected, I'm going to be in federal court the day after I get elected with a class action to recompense the people of this state who've been so badly hosed down by this vicious law.
In this case, I'm guessing you would use your attorney general to help you in that regard.
Yes, I would.
You keep mentioning Sam Sloan, the former, he's still a Republican, former state senator. He's now out of office. Would you hire someone like Sam to work for you?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I would retire and replace myself with Sam if he would do it. He's a terrific guy. Yeah, absolutely. He's not a lawyer, unfortunately, so he can't be the state attorney general. But I have somebody already picked out for that. So
you're going to tell us who that is?
Yeah, Chris Diaz.
Who's Chris Diaz?
He's a young man that I practiced law with for a number of years. He's a Punahou grad, a track star, terrific guy, really excellent attorney, and knows exactly where I'm coming from and understands the impact of this on agriculture. People don't understand fundamentally what's wrong here is agriculture should be our #1 component of this economy, but it's not. It doesn't even register practically. And we've got so much products that we can send worldwide here to be making serious money, and it's just not happening. And I have a whole slew, I don't want to tell you how many, but grandchildren, great-grandchildren coming up, and in order to ensure their future, that is the reason I'm running, and that's the reason I'm running so hard, because if I don't get it this time, there's a good chance I won't win the next time around. So
okay, let's talk about agriculture, because that is a big deal. People from both parties, as well as the independent and third parties, have argued the same thing. You know, we used to be highly dependent. Sugar was our main industry. We also had pineapple.
Right.
And of course, most of that has gone by the wayside. Even the ancient Hawaiians, the native Hawaiians, prior to the separation of the government from Queen Leleokalani, were highly thriving. They had ahupua'a concept.
Yeah.
What would you possibly do, however, to bring this back? I mean, right now, if I understand correctly, the biggest crop that we have is the seed industry. And a lot of that has been tied up in controversy over GMO and pesticides.
And corn, yes.
How would you get past that?
Well, #1 is the things that we can, for one thing, that my dad was a chemical engineer, and I would probably ban GMO in this state if I got.
You would ban genetically modified organisms?
I absolutely would, because they're putting pesticides and herbicides into the chromosomes, and that is being what's allowing them to produce these good-looking plants that taste terrible and are potentially dangerous. We don't know what's going to happen 10 or 15, 20 years from now because of those changes, and I'm looking at that, and I would make that a major issue for people like Tissue Genesis to be looking into the stem cell.
Well, people like Monsanto and Dow Chemical.
They want to shoot me, no doubt.
Well, they probably do.
Yeah.
They have a lot of influence with lawmakers here. You mentioned being on the take with Alexander and Baldwin and Mattson and so forth. The GMO industries give a lot of money too to lawmakers.
Yes, I know. I didn't mean to say on the take, but I'm saying hush money.
Hush money, okay. I'm not sure there's much distinction, but I respect that.
Well, for me,
but I want to make sure I get this right. You want to go organic. You feel that's the way to go.
I'm organic, and but I'm with chemical fertilizers and pesticides, herbicides, all that stuff that we can get from Korea and China and Japan, and for way less than what we're getting it from now. Just to give an example, I have a small farm in the Big Island. They have a thing called Beefy 12, which is a fattener for beef, and I used to raise cattle up there. And a bag of that in Seattle costs like $4.60. The same bag in Waimea, and this is 30 years ago, was like $12. It's now up to around $31. So people cannot make a living farming here anymore. Another issue with that is the fact that we've got Oahu lands. There's all over the place. There's no inventory. We've got a lot of Hawaiians who want to do farming, and they cannot get on it. And the same thing with the state agricultural lands. And I intend to go through the inventory on both state and Oahu lands and make sure that they're getting out to people who can farm effectively.
Okay, and let me make sure I have this clear. You're saying you oppose GMO, genetically modified organisms, but you are supportive of using pesticides and herbicides in agriculture?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I thought I heard you say earlier that you had mixed feelings about poisoning.
No, what it is they're putting the pesticides and herbicides into the chromosome of the plant, so it's growing up with something you can't wash off. In other words, it's genetic to the plant.
It's being modified.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. You mentioned unfunded liabilities, the health benefits, the pensions for state and county workers. Right now, the unfunded liability figure is about $25 billion.
$1 billion, exactly, yeah.
What are you going to do about that?
Well, okay, first of all, this will cost me all of the votes in the state workers, but I'm going to get a survey of every job in the state government. I'm going to find out what they're getting paid for it, whether it's worth it or not, and if it's not necessary and affordable, it's going to be gone. Now, I say that knowing that we have some tremendously good workers and really, talented people in the state workforce, and I certainly don't intend to eliminate that. But I do want to be getting our money's worth for our tax dollar.
You feel that there's waste going on
Yes.
in government, the public sector unions that work for the city and county and the counties and the state. That's waste there.
Specifically in the state, because they have, when Wahei took over as governor, he jacked up the total number of state workers by 25% in that 8-year period that he was in. We've never gotten over that, and that debt has gone up and up and up, and the cost has gone up and up and up, and I intend to stop that trend and get it straightened out and get it to where it's affordable. That's what we've got to be looking at.
You also said, though, the obvious, which is you're probably going to upset a lot of people and not get their votes. I'm actually going to quote from Civil Beat, Stuart Yurden's article on unfunded liabilities. The HGA, that's the largest union in the state, primarily white collar, but I think some blue collar as well, is not going to like me, I can tell you that. That's a lot of potential votes. You want to eliminate up to 25% of government workers.
I want to see if 25% can be eliminated, is what I'm saying. I want to do a survey and find out what needs to be done or what can be done that makes economic sense. Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Let me just tell you one little thing from history. I never got endorsed by HGA until 1978, and then I finally got endorsed by David Trask, and I was over there talking to him, and I had gone from House to Senate, and I said, David, you're so knowledgeable and you're so effective. How come you don't run for office? He said, John, I would rather be here telling Ariyoshi what to do than have Ariyoshi over here telling me what to do. So basically what he's saying is, my position as a union leader, I control more than what the governor does because I control him. And that is no BS.
You actually had HGA support in this race back in 1978.
78, yeah.
What was the seat?
It's State Senate.
State Senate. Did you win?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I got to ask you
this. It taught me a
this.
lesson, don't talk bad about the unions. So.
But you don't seem to have any hesitation in expressing very frankly that you think that's a concern.
Well,
you're looking at actually cutting union jobs.
I'm actually talking about making Hawaii affordable. What it's going to take to do is what we will do. If the jobs are needed and they're necessary, we'll have them. If we don't need them and they just make work, then they're going to be gone. And I think most of the employees that I know in the state government feel the same way. They don't get any joy out of the fact that there's 25% more people that they need. They're paying taxes just as well. And the cost of living, the fact that people are leaving the state, all of this adds up to really a cauldron of sense of need for change that's positive. And you can sit here and talk all day about, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but you've got to make these fundamental changes, and that is why I'm running, because this change that starts with the Jones Act is a major part of that.
Unions, I got to just ask one more question along these lines. Barring some miracle, the state legislature, House and Senate, are going to stay in strong control by the Democratic Party, our delegation in Washington in all likelihood as well. Many of those people depend heavily, support strongly the unions here in Hawaii. Historically, they're very loyal. You're going to have to convince a lot of other people that this is a good idea to really force people to cut back the operations of our state.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's my approach to this. I was a union member as an airline pilot for over 30 years. So I see the need for unions. I know what they can do and I know what they can't do. But what I found out as a union member when they wanted to go on strike is you need to find out what the company can afford, what you need, and then how that can match up. And so we avoided a strike at Hawaiian in 1983 just on the basis of looking at what's doable and what's not doable. The other thing I want to mention is, and I'm very proud of this, is that when I was in the State House for 8 years, every bit of environmental law that we have here now came off of my desk. But I worked with Tadao Beppu, with Gene King, with Henry Peters, with Richard Kawakami, and we got all of everything from the monk seal and green sea turtle protection, shoreline protection management act, the Sunshine Bill, all of that came off. And the point I'm making is that I know what needs to be done. I don't have to have credit for getting it done, but I will work with the Democrat leadership, and I've always been able to get along with them. I don't go around trashing them or anything like that, but I do know what needs to be done, and I can convince them this is how to do it, and that's going to be my approach to the Democrat legislature.
Those are all legends that you just mentioned, people that were very prominent in the party. Do you have ties with the existing state legislature that are similar?
No, not really. No, there's nobody there right now that I can, well, yeah, actually, no, there's no. Well, I'm sorry, Bob McDermott.
Bob McDermott.
And Gene Ward, I'm friends with them, both of them, yeah.
Okay, because again, the challenge will be having very few Republicans to work with, trying to push your agenda on a democratically controlled House and Senate.
Right, well, the thing of it is Shirley Ostrov is a retired Air Force colonel, and she's doing, I really think, a tremendous job in getting the word out about how the failure has occurred. And by the way, I'm going to mention there's a video that was produced by Eric Ryan, my very, very dear friend. Some people don't care for him much, but he is an absolute genius, and he put this video together, the best thing that the Republican Party has ever had, and I believe that they're going to go forward with it, and it really illustrates the failure of the Democrat Party and how people, really nice people like Ige, have been sucked into this morass of bad government, and this is a time for change, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, you mentioned that video. I don't know if it's the same video that's on your website right now. Is that the one you're talking about?
I hope so, yeah.
It says special interest politics and disastrous leadership are destroying our islands. It very strongly features David Ige, the current governor, and Colleen Hanabusa, the challenger in the Democratic primary. What have they done that has been so disastrous in destroying our islands? Can you cite an example?
Well, what they have done that is disastrous is they've done nothing to get the changes made that need to be done. And as I say, the total economic situation here is ludicrous when you look at it. When I first came to Hawaii, you had all kinds of ships in the harbor here. We were shipping they were, you talk about pineapple and sugar, that's part, but we had breadfruit, we had sandalwood, there was any number of other products that were being shipped out of here from the days of the kingdom and potentially up until now. And that is what I want to see happen. And plus, we've got mango and lilikoi and papaya and guava, all of these things that will sell at high numbers on worldwide markets. Just as an aside here, since we have so much time, I went to Sapporo in Japan.
It's going just like this.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Went to Japan in 1992, and a person had done a favor for me, a Japanese vice president at Japan Airlines, and I said, what can I do? They said, buy him a honeydew melon. No, a cantaloupe. I said, a cantaloupe, are you kidding? So I go down thinking it'll be, 8 or 10. Cantaloupe in Sapporo was $45. Now, if you can pay $45 for a cantaloupe, you imagine what you'd pay for one of Eric Ching's mangoes. They're just, melt in your mouth. They're probably $300. So
I asked this same question of Ray LaRue, and I'm going to ask Andrea Topola as well, who's going to join me on this program too. The presidency, the Congress, arguably the Supreme Court, Republican, a majority of legislatures and governorships in the United States. Why hasn't that come to Hawaii, that Republican dominance?
Well, we have not had the Republican leadership that makes it come here. That's why I'm basically running, because we need to get our message out. I have been, I hate to say squelched, but I've gotten no publicity over the Jones Act since 1972. And it's clearly...
Except for us, we've called it.
Well, no, I'm sorry, but no, thank God for Civil Beat. You're the first, no, hey, look, amen, brother, yeah.
There's the plug tonight, first plug for Civil Beat. Thank you, John.
Listen, I can't tell you how overjoyed that I am. The coverage you folks have given me has made up and cut the hurt from all the last 40 years of neglect, so.
But do you think if you become the leader of your party, which you would be if you're a governor, that you can have the coattails to bring in, arguably that is something Linda Lingle was able to do, to grow the membership, to actually get more Republicans in office?
Yeah, actually, Lingle did a lousy job as governor. When I was party chairman, and that's before she was, we had, I think, 17 in the House and 8 in the Senate. And by the time she went out, we had like 4 or 5 people in the House, or 7 maybe, and going downhill. And then plus the people that are in, like Beth Fukumoto and Miss Tupola, who are basically working 92% with the Democrats. So we haven't, made any progress there at all. But Shirlene is well on her way to making that happen. And I believe that if I can get elected and get the conservative message out, as you folks are doing for us, the people are going to realize this is wrong. We've got to go another way, and that Civil Beat will be leading the way. And by the way, I'll urge everyone to donate to your your fund. Yeah.
You can talk to other people in the department about that one. I'm going to have, that's above my pay grade, but thank you. Just to let everybody know at home, we're about the halfway point. I have about another 15 minutes of questions, and then we're going to turn to reader questions that have already been sent in, and if you folks in the audience as well. We'll figure out the logistics of handling the microphone here. But let me go on to a question that I do have to ask you as someone of the same party. How do you think President Trump's doing?
I think he's doing fantastic. And well, okay, let me just, can I divert on this?
Sure.
When I heard that Trump was running, my first thought was, what is this idiot even thinking about? But as I heard the primaries going on, I was asked by Hiram Fong and the party to run for U.S. Congress in 1966, and Nixon had run for president and he'd run for governor of California and lost, and I had run for Congress and lost, and I spent 2 hours with him in front of the airport just talking, and he was chiding me about, I was really pro-war Vietnam guy, with my military background and so forth, and then he switched over to world peace, and then he started talking about the monolithic Communist Party, that there is no monolithic Communist Party. The Russians are fighting the Chinese on the Uzbekistan border or whatever, and on and on and on. And he said, we've got to open free trade. We've got to get, become friends with China. We've got to open Russia. And so that's exactly what he did. And then again, that's what Reagan did. And so when we were hearing these debates, I'm hearing Trump talking, and it sounds like I'm hearing Nixon. And I had backed Ben Carson. I actually had bumper stickers and stuff for Ben, and finally I thought, this is crazy, and I called up Ben's PR email. I said, look, you guys should bail out of this presidential, go behind Trump and back him up for president, and then you go for vice president. And they ultimately did do it. They didn't go for vice president, but they did go that.
He's the HUD secretary now.
Yeah, HUD secretary, but he's a brilliant guy.
Some might say making a comparison to Richard Nixon may not be the best way to compare Trump.
Well, the point of it is what Nixon said about free trade and world peace is true, and Reagan has shown it, and even everything that's happening right now. And I have to confess that when Trump came out with these huge tariffs, this goes directly against what Nixon had on his mind. But then I'm thinking, this guy's a deal maker. He's got something going on, and now I'm finding out how much the tariffs are on the other side. So what he's done is set up a business trade arrangement so that he can say, we'll cut this if you cut that, and so forth. And I don't pretend to know, but all I can say is the stock market, the jobless, the homeless, the
things are going pretty
living,
well.
Everything going tremendous, better than they ever have before. So
any truth to this Russia business?
Well, Putin didn't call me and really confirm it, so I have no idea.
Okay, you don't know Vladimir Putin personally. That's okay.
Well, I didn't say that.
You're a supporter of the president.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Let's talk more about you. You've got a flyer here on how you would improve Hawaii's economy. And I actually want to point to some of this stuff because one or two of these ideas keep coming up over and over again at the legislature. And I've actually heard a few Democrats that have said it's a good idea. Even this last session, Andrea Topolo was pushing this. Eliminate Hawaii's excise taxes on food and prescriptive drugs. This one as well, increase the personal tax deduction for families. These seem like fairly common sense solutions. Why don't they catch on? I mean, why do we levy the GET on food and drugs?
Well, number one is those two that you just mentioned, I put those in the first time, 1970.
Oh, so you're the guy that initially...
So it's taken 40 years for these jackasses to, to catch on as to what's going on. And how come it took Republicans this long is just idiotic to me that they don't get it. The other thing is referendum and recall and impeachment. I put in bills for that. They also never passed. But we need to have people running this government, not the government running the people. And everything that I will do as governor is going to be set in that direction.
Okay, so those are two specific policies in terms of the economy. You mentioned referendum and recall.
Yes.
Voter initiative.
Yes.
We do at the county level have some of that, but if not at the state level, would you be in support of a constitutional convention? As you know, that question will be on the ballot this fall, and some have argued that that would be precisely the place, elect some delegates to a con to then ask these very fundamental questions.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you would support those at the state level?
Not only support them, I introduced bills to do that for a 10-year period. So
a con is something you're going to...
For con, absolutely,
support.
Yeah.
Okay. Education, another issue that's very close to you.
Yes, yes.
And I'm going to bring up some ideas. You want to increase the classroom curriculum budgets. How are you going to do that? Right now, a good chunk of change already goes to the Department of Education. And Ray LaRue himself said he thinks that money is being misspent. It's not properly being handled. How are you going to ask the legislature and ultimately taxpayers to give more money to education?
I'm going to tell Ray LaRue to quit copying my speeches. So
Ray's probably listening at home right now.
No, I hope he is. So anyway, well, first of all, what I'm saying is absolutely that. And I was a classroom teacher, and I hate to say it, but for 3.5 months. But I made more money flying jet fighters part-time than I made full-time as a classroom teacher. I taught at elementary school.
What did you teach?
Sixth grade.
Sixth
and they had what they called homogeneous grouping. So they had, and I had the bottom 6 of sixth grade. So you had every well, I won't go into how they culled them, but it's just an absurd thing to do. But the fact of the matter is that the DOE is a total waste of money. I think that the bureaucracy there is ridiculous. They're not doing anything. We're number 50 of all the states in terms of the ultimate product, which is our students and what they can do when they get out. And as far as I'm concerned, the bulk of that bureaucracy is going to be gone. I want a curriculum center, I want a personnel division, and I want a very small state headquarters. But I think we and maybe one other state have a statewide education system. They totally fail. And we have the school community-based management councils where we can get the money from that's being wasted right now in the bureaucracy down to the schools. But primarily, I want that money, that billions that are going to the bureaucracy, down to the teachers. So elementary school teachers, probably the most important people in our community, more than ministers, doctors, nurses, parents even, because they're with the kids so much. And we want them well paid and happy doing what they're doing. And that is the one of my number one focuses as governor.
You don't think Governor Ige's done well in education? He's managed to get a new superintendent in charge. Mind you, that was a decision by the Board of Education, but he backs Kishimoto in what she's doing. His wife, a vice principal for many years, Dawn, he feels education is improved. And in fact, there has been some improvement on test scores. They're getting air conditioning into the classrooms.
Jesus, well, welcome to the 20th century, yeah.
Go ahead and speak into the mic, because we don't want to
okay, I say welcome to the 20th
century.
century, that we're going to have air conditioning. How wonderful. But anyway, I think they've been a total failure, and they do not understand what the school system's all about. The bureaucracy is draining the funds that should be going to the teachers. The teachers' pay is going to be number 1. School community-based management councils is number 2, and I have done that as I live on the farm before on the Big Island, and I set them up at Honoka'a and Waimea, so I know what I'm talking about when it comes to that. And I think the charter schools, homeschool, can all use the curriculum center, and the money that's coming down by saving the money from the bureaucracy can also be used by the homeschoolers and the charter schools. I don't feel there's any point in isolating them. So, I mean, those are some of my basic ideas.
The teachers union has pushed a proposal. They were successful in getting a ballot question that'll also be before voters in November, along with the con question. This is the one that would basically have a levy a tax or a surcharge, an additional tax on investment properties, expensive properties, and that money would go directly to education, although the legislature would have first dibs on that. Is that a good idea to vote for that?
No, I don't think so. As far as I'm concerned, I am not going to be a governor that's promoting taxes on anything, tax increases. I'm going to be promoting tax decreases and tax spending, so that what money we're spending by tax dollars is going to be worth the spending and not just being tossed out there because they decided to do it 15 years ago. Well, anyway, I don't know if that answers your...
That's fair enough. Speaking of taxes, rail, where do you stand on rail? How's that going?
Oh, wonderfully well, yeah. It's
There's a certain dry humor that you have, John.
Okay. Well, we happened to look at the minutes from the HART board, and they called for an executive session. And by the way, the group in here is the people that revealed this to me. We got through Rory Nakamura, I guess.
On mic, if you could, sir.
Yeah, oh, sorry. They found out that the minutes of that HART board meeting reflected an executive session, but no minutes came out of the executive session. But looking at the minutes before that they filed for the executive session, or asked for it, said that basically they are concerned about liability and immunity. And if you read that whole, and I'll send you the set of those minutes too, by the way, in case you don't have them. But it's very clear that that place is so fouled up that it's just absolutely unbelievable.
Now, even though this is a city and county project, the state now has influence in this. For example, the state auditor has been asked to look into how things are operating. The governor has some influence in how that goes. And as you know, we're using the general excise tax and the transient accommodation tax, including on the neighbor islands. Do you support in principle this idea of connecting the Kapolei area into Ala Moana and maybe on to UH Manoa?
Well, what I put it this way, what I support is finding out what has actually been done, what has been spent, and what I intend to do, and I think John Henry Felix has also brought this up, is we need to have a forensic audit to find out where every dime came from, who it went to, what they got for it, what the state got for it, and then we need to find out what, if anything, can be done with respect to new technology, the cost of destroying what's up there, and looking at what is affordable and doable within the budget of what we have here. And right now, when you talk about operating budgets, they're looking at $35 a ticket, and nobody's going to ride that thing for $35.
There have been some questions as to how this thing is going to be able to maintain itself in terms of its operation. There is a state audit that does come. Les Kondo has already been looking into that.
Exactly.
With the HART board over that. Is that not enough? Forensic audit is...
No, I want a forensic audit ordered by the federal court, because I want to know, I want the people who are doing the auditing to have no connections in this state. I want them to be from outside the state. I want them to be professionals, auditors that can do this. And when we get that audit finished, then we'll know which way to go. But I would not make anything as a definite statement with respect to HART, other than that it needs a very, very serious introspection right now. And it also, if I am governor, I'm going to stop everything for at least 90 days until I've got a very good grip on where we're going.
Was that an executive order?
Yes, if I can do it.
Even though it's a city and county project, you'd be able to...
I don't know that. I have to check the law, but that's my inclination. And I've also written to Ige and asked him to do the same thing. So, and by the way, I really feel sorry for him. I think he's a really nice guy, and he just got a really bad hand to deal with. So,
You may have the chance to face him in the fall, or Colleen Hanabusa, depends on how it works out.
Well, it's fine with me, yeah.
You and I talked beforehand about some issues that were close to your heart, and both of them kind of, to me, they're rather novel ideas, and I want to see if you can tell me a little bit more about possibly instituting these. One of them is to have, I hope I got this right, essentially the equivalent of the Tour de France on the Big Island, to have a 3 to 5 day cycling event. Maybe it starts in Hilo, goes up to Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, down to Kona, over to South Point,
Yes.
And your idea is that this would be a good showcase for the state. And now you know they already got the triathlon that happens over there, the Ironman, right?
But anybody can run a triathlon.
Anyone can run a triathlon.
Yeah, but the Tour de Hawaii.
The Tour de Hawaii, okay.
Will be better than anything that anybody's ever put on a bike, because there's never been a piece of geography that's got two 14,000-foot mountains, 50 miles apart from each other.
Yeah.
So we can start the Tour de Hawaii in Kona with, bikinis and all this in February. They'll go up Mauna Kea to snow, and then down into Hilo. The next day, over into Volcano, and then up to Mauna Loa, then around South Point, and then perhaps up to Kona, and then on around Kohala in that area.
Yeah, Waimea.
Yeah.
Down to Honolulu,
So,
maybe.
but so I can feature about a 4 to 5 day. The problem I have with it is I don't think I can do it, because I've ridden up to 11,000 feet, and it's pretty hard.
I couldn't do it.
Well, well, we won't ask
Although,
you. So.
According to your website, your activities, you mentioned glider flying, or maybe that didn't come off the interview, but you are a biker, is that right?
Yeah.
And a surfer as well?
Well, I don't surf now, but I have, yeah.
In the past, and squash and handball?
Yes.
Much more active than my lifestyle. The other idea that you have also goes right to your own experience, and also to the economy and education. You'd like to have an aviation school.
Amen,
for
yes.
Hawaii, where we would actually train people to be pilots. Why is that a good idea?
Well, number one, the military is no longer hardly training pilots now, because you can blow up a whole state with practically nothing. So, so there's about a need for like 80,000 is the number that I've heard, and I've been in China and talked to the people in China about getting this aviation school put in place, and Hawaii has the absolutely best environment for aviation training, and we can start them at Dillingham with glider flying, and so they can find if they really like to fly. That's a real good test, and then they can
stay right on the mic for me.
Oh yeah,
Thank you.
I'm flying it. So anyway,
That's all right. It's not like you're in the cockpit.
Single engine land can go there, then down to Kona for their instrument training, multi-engine jet, and we also have I would probably want to get a Bachelor of Science degree in aviation. Then when they graduate from there, and by the way, we can be charging 150 grand a year to people from Arabia and at different places that can afford it to go to this flight school, because it'll be primo from the world's greatest flight school ever. And when they come out of there, they'll have a degree, a multi-engine land, commercial instrument, and be able to go to work for an airline right off the bat. Yeah. And that's my goal, and we can do that. And I've been talked to by the government of one of the provinces in China, and they didn't come up with the money, but we have plenty of people here who can do that. So.
Okay, 2 more questions for me, and then I'm going to shift to what some of the readers sent in. We tend to use the word perennial whenever we talk about John Carroll in our press, and the reason is you've been active for a long time. You've run multiple times for office. I believe it includes the U.S. Senate as recently as 2 years ago.
Yes.
I think back in 2012 as well. You haven't won.
And in 2020 as well, against the Kaka.
You're 2006?
2000, yeah.
Well, I guess my question for you is, you haven't won. It's been difficult to get elected. What keeps you going?
This is an interesting thing. My dad was a track coach, okay, and he was a college professor, and he showed me his yearbook, and it had a picture of this track team, and there was a guy on the side of this, this side of the track, and he said, "You see this guy? He claimed he had a hurt ankle during the mile, and we could have won that, but he quit. And the worst thing in the world is to be a quitter. And so I just do not quit. The whole idea of being a quitter I find nauseous, if that answers your question.
No, it does indeed. So, my last question for you, and you and I talked about this beforehand. There was a debate Friday in Hilo. I flew up from Honolulu.
Yeah, right.
The other 4 candidates for governor, David Ige, Colleen Hanabusa, Ray LaRue, and Andrea Tupola, made it and participated. You were on the bill and had to cancel. Sherry Bracken explained that it was for medical reasons. Tell us about why you missed that debate and how your health is now.
Just terrified to be in that competition.
My guess is you were not terrified to face those guys.
I'm kidding.
Some have raised the concern about.
I'm just joking. Yeah. Anyway, no, the reason is I have you were like a sissy if you put sunscreen on. So I've had about 50 of the, or maybe not 50, but a whole slew of these, subcutaneous cancers. And I had one in my skull, and or above my skull, I should say. And I did not want to take a chance on having it metastasize, and they moved it up the time. And so I did.
The doctors.
Yeah, exactly. And so I said, well, can we move it back? And they said, well, are you willing to take a chance? And I said, no, I'm not. So that's why I bailed out on that. I really wanted to go to Hilo because I love being in that environment, yeah. But that's what happened. But anyway, it's gone. And I've been taking oxycodone, so if I sound non-coherent, you know why. So
No, you sound fine. But I did, some have raised the concern about your age. You're at 88.
Age, is that
although it's interesting, Malaysia just sent back to office a 93-year-old leader, and he ran there before, and he's very well admired. Is that a reasonable concern, should you be elected governor at your age?
No, absolutely not. I'd say the main concern is, am I old enough to run for governor? And definitely I am. So, and I've had 88 years to get ready to do this job. And as I say, if Sam King over there would have run, I probably would have elected him instead of me. But so, is that Sam King?
I don't know if that's Sam King, but it looks like him, but I don't think that's Sam.
Sorry.
He's running for Oahu, but that's all right.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm going to turn. We're just nearing the end here. We have about just less than 15 minutes. I got a couple of questions that came in from our readers beforehand, and I mentioned some of them before. What's your long-term vision for Hawaii? We hear about 2045, 2040, 2050, and so forth. And tell me what Hawaii will look like 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Yeah, perfect.
If you're able to help get it there.
No, absolutely. That's all I've had on my mind since I was in my 20s and 30s, or when I first got into the legislature, because all that environmental law that I put in, I didn't put in for 10 years. I was looking at 100 years or 500 years, or what's going to happen in the reefs, or what's going to happen with the lobster and the turtle and so forth. Anyway, so I'm looking very, very long range, and right now, I know what's fundamentally wrong here. I know what needs to be done to change it, and I will do it. And that's why I'm running, because I know that with the skills that I have, both militarily, in law, and in legislature, and plus the people that I have backing me up, we will get things done that need to get done. And even if I die in 2 or 3 years from now, that thing will be in motion, because the first week that I'm in office, we're going to have, number one, a forensic audit being asked for. We're going to have a suit against the federal government to get rid of the Jones Act restrictions. We're going to be after to make sure that the Hawaiian homes, there's 24,000 people that are qualified for Hawaiian homelands, and they don't have it. And they've been 24,000 people. That thing's been going on since 1920. That's an absolute crime that happened. And I've got my great-grandchildren, they're all part Hawaiian, not all, but about 80% are part Hawaiian. So this thing with the Hawaiian culture, the Hawaiian promises, that's got to be taken care of. The economy obviously has to be taken care of, and the things that I will do in the first week are going to be set in motion. So even if I die on Friday, by Saturday, things will still be going. So
I'm glad you mentioned the Hawaiian homelands issue, because I don't know if it's 24,000. I've heard as many as 30,000 on the wait list. I don't have the precise figure. What nobody disputes is that there's a lot of people that have been waiting for a very long time to really be seated on the land that they are entitled to.
Absolutely,
because of their ancestry. What are you going to do to change that?
Well, number one is they don't even have an inventory of what is available. And what people generally don't know is that the Hawaiian homelands are primarily designed for farming, not just for residential 10,000 square foot land. So we need to know what's available. We also need to know at the same time what's available in the state land, because the DLNR has a whole lot of land that's good for farming. What I intend to do is to get the inventories done, and then I'm going to get on the commission. I'm going to ask the legislature to pass a law that says that they get the land in fee simple absolute, and if they sell it, it has to be sold to another Native Hawaiian. But short of that, they will not be put onto this 99-year lease and have to give it up. Like right now, Waimanalo and Nanakuli, they've got people that are going below 25 percentile, and they're having to get off, theoretically have to get off the land. The commissioners are making all kinds of money. The same thing, Hawaiian Homes commissioners, as well as the, never mind about that.
You would appoint the director and the assistant director of Hawaiian Homelands if you become governor.
Exactly, yes. But I do want to get that primary fundamental change in the law, and I want to get land out to everybody who's entitled to it, and I want it now. And I've seen numbers as high as 44,000. The only one I've been able to pin down is 24,000, but I've heard the numbers all the way up to 44.
Okay, and I just got to come up with one related issue, and then we'll turn to the audience. TMT Mauna Kea, the 30-meter telescope.
That's in the hands of the court.
It is.
Yeah, but first of all, when I was in the legislature, they ended up giving an interest to Canada and to France and the University of Hawaii. And I went to and I was in the State House. I said, why the hell, I mean, why are we doing this? And they said, well, they had some magical stuff that's going on. So, number one, I've never been that happy about what's been going on up there. But what I do know is that the Native Hawaiians found this place through, basically through astronomy. And this would be an extension of the original Hawaiian quest, if you want to look at it from that point of view. The other point of view is, what are the contractual obligations? What is the court going to do? And I don't intend to stick my nose into it. I don't think Pele is concerned about it. And it's a matter of what can be done and what should be done, and I don't know enough to say anything more than that.
Okay, got it. I'm going to check with our audience to see if there are any questions from folks. We have about 10 minutes left, and we're going to have to take this microphone and give it back to you because we only have one good standalone mic like this. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and we have this gentleman right here. So Marco's going to have to come back or repeat the question or give the mic to John. Sir.
My name is Rory Nakamura. As governor, would you remove the food tax and the medicine tax for the senior citizens?
Not only would I do that, I would jump to the chance to do that, and actually I have already put in legislation to do that very thing over 40 years ago, so yes. That's, as any tax on food and drugs we shouldn't have. I don't think we should even have the general excise tax. It's a progressive tax, and even though it doesn't appear to be just on food and drugs, it's actually on everything that we have in here, and it goes on from the time they, buy it wholesale on the mainland, and it just goes on and on and on to what appears to be 5% sales tax is actually more like a 14 or 15% tax. So
you would eliminate the GET? You're not saying you would cut it altogether.
I am. I think the general excise tax is ridiculous because right now what people don't know, you can make say you make $1 million and your cost of making the million is $980,000. So your actual profit is $20,000. But you're going to pay general excise tax on $1 million because that's what you took in. And that's just dead wrong.
That's enormous revenue that's generated for the state.
I'm quite aware of that.
How are you going to replace that?
I'm going to, I'll save that for an election.
All right, okay. Back to audience questions. Mariko, anybody else? Questions, please? Over here, this gentleman, and then up here.
Frank Genadio, I'm a supporter of
Hi,
Mr.
Frank.
Carroll. I live out in West Oahu, and I've seen a lot of dangerous activity on the roads. Mainly because we lack an Oahu Raceway. I'd like to know if Mr. Carroll would support building an Oahu Raceway and getting the people who are looking for speed off the roads.
Thanks, Frank. I've heard this question from other people as well. You got the question.
Yeah, I have, but being a guy who likes to go slow, I really... Yeah, absolutely. I think if there's that much of a need for that, I'd like to see a petition circulated to see how many people really do want it, because I know we used to have at the old stadium, they had the raceway, and then they had one at Barbers Point. Now
Kalailoa, yeah.
They've all both disappeared. But, yeah, speed is fun, I got to say that. So, but, yeah, Frank, I would work with that one if there's enough demand for it.
Okay, great. Eric, who, full disclosure, actually works with the candidate.
Thank you, Chad. John, I had a question concerning incarceration and the prisons. What do you foresee if you were governor to how you would handle the prison system?
Okay, now that's an interesting question because nobody ever asked that question, but we've got all kinds of people in jail. I hate to keep talking about when I was in the legislature, but we had Olinda and Kulani prisons were open, and then they wanted to close them down, and the reason they wanted to close them down is because they said, Well, the families of the prisoners have to go all the way to Hilo and all the way to Maui to visit them. And of course, now they're going to go to North Dakota or someplace, but.
Well, Arizona is the primary place.
Or all different, but on the mainland, so it's totally ludicrous. But what I studied as a legislator, I went to New Zealand and Australia, and they have partial release programs. And so what I see is a lot of the people that are in prison, maybe most of them, have some sense of, who am I? What am I worth? And I think it's really important when their prisoners are in jail that we look to their future and look to what they can do to get a sense of self-worth, and by doing various jobs such as printing and such as mechanical work, making driver's licenses, doing stream cleanups, all this kind of thing can be done. And under John Burns, he knocked all of that out of the prison system so that all they could do is play handball or volleyball and sit around and wait for lunch. It's just absurd to use waste of time. And so I intend to look very closely at all of the prison system. I want to reinsert hard labor as part of punishment, so that when they go in there, the first thing they're going to do is be put on a work gang and work for 7 or 8 hours a day doing hard labor, and then they'll know this is what punishment is. But then from there, like in Australia, they have them tending bars and working as waiters. They're doing all different kinds of things, and they also pay them some amount of money so that when they get out of prison, they've got a little, little nest egg built up and so forth. So I think that prison reform and correction is very, very important, and at the same time, we need to educate our parents to not be telling kids that they're useless or stupid or, the kinds of things that make them run off.
Time for one more question, this gentleman right here, and then we're going to have to wrap things up.
Hello, Mr. John Carroll. I just want you, I want to know about what would you say or what would you do about the Kingdom of Hawaii Constitution of 1852 for the Kanaka Maoris? Thank you.
I hate these easy questions like that, yeah.
The Constitution of 1852, back when Hawaii
Okay,
was
well,
a
first
kingdom.
of all, I'm just going to briefly answer the question. Number one is, under international law, there's been an illegal military occupation of the kingdom since 1893. There's never been a time when the Marines, Navy, Army was not in this kingdom. So by international law, the kingdom still exists. The question is, what can you do about it? And the question that I would say is that they need to have a plebiscite that would be voted on by only the people who were born here or who have, relatives that lived here, like you have, Filipinos, Chinese that came here in the 1800s. Those people
that were citizens of the kingdom.
The citizens of the kingdom or born here, which would make them literally citizens, they would be the ones to vote. People like me could not vote. But I think that needs to be done, and they need to get it done at a fairly early time so that people can really assess where we are as a state, where we can go, and what we can do. And just for your information, I'm looking at Singapore, and what they have, 250 square miles of land. They've got a gross domestic product of in excess of $120 billion a year. We've got 6,000 square miles and a gross domestic product of less than $80 billion a year, most of which is tourism and government spending. So I understand where the sovereignty folks are coming from. I think we need to go there. We need to address those issues, and I absolutely intend to do that. It's very high on my priority. A lot of my Howley friends get really mad when I talk about the kingdom still existing, but unfortunately that's a fact. Could I say one other thing?
You better make it quick.
Yeah, okay. It's at Carroll8081. It's a Twitter account. I'm apparently very derelict in social media, and I was forced to make that announcement. Please go to Carroll8081. Oh, no, at Carroll. Oh, dear. Well, I can't even say it right. But anyway, well, you get the
I'll tell you
idea.
what, I'll see if I can help you there. This is, Eric, is this his website that you're plugging right now?
What is it? It's a new Twitter account.
It's a
isn't
new
it?
Twitter account. Well, go on Twitter and punch in John Carroll, and hopefully the address will come up.
Yeah.
I got to wrap things up, John. I apologize. You can go online and find out more about John Carroll. I got to say thank you very much to Hawaii Pacific University. And John, thank you. It was an absolute delight to share.
For me as well.
Absolutely. And I can also tell you this, tomorrow night, Colleen Hanabusa, the U.S. Congresswoman who's also running for governor, will be on this very stage beginning around 6:30. We're going to start a little bit later. The Congresswoman has a prior event and be running a little bit late. Governor David Ige will be here in this very same chair on August the 1st. And Andrea Topola, another Republican, the minority leader in the House, on August the 2nd. For more information, pick up a handout and visit us online at civilbeat.org for full election coverage. And remember to vote on August the 11th for Honolulu Civil Beat. I'm Chad Blair. Take care and aloha.